This is the May 13th, 2015 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. Moving on to business, the first item on tonight's agenda is a notice of intent continued from prior hearings, CMB Realty Trust, concerning DEP file number 2060739. The project location is 577 Rear Lawrence Street, and it's to stabilize the bank of the River Meadow Brook to prevent erosion pursuant to a letter. And Joe, I can't open the letter, but from their engineer requesting a continuance to the May 27th meeting. So do I have a motion to, unless there's any discussion on it, do I have a motion to continue?
Move to continue per request of the proponent.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Tonight's second item is a request for determination of applicability. Elizabeth Calavis, 29 Bigelow Street. The project location is 29 Bigelow Street, and it's to add 3 rooms to an existing house. Yes, sir.
We're here to answer any questions you may have. I think well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Conservation Commission. My name is Paul Catalano. I'm the contractor of record, and I'm here to help Betty this evening and assist her in helping you approve her project. So I was understand that you have the plans here and that you had questions. There was a silt fence issue that wasn't put on the plot plan the first time. And then we had that taken care of by the surveyor. He placed the silt fence on there. And we hope that that's satisfied you.
Yeah, we have a plot plan that with an indication of the siltation barrier placed at the, or just before the, or on the correct side of the 50-foot setback from the wetland boundary. That's largely a grassed area there anyway.
Yes,
it's a
it
grassed yard, so.
Yes.
All right. I don't really have any other issues or comments from the last night. Commissioner Varnum?
Do these rooms all have a foundation?
Yes. Yes, they're under foundation, correct. Mm-hmm. Oh, pardon me. The sunroom is under concrete pier, but the remaining section, the family room and the laundry, is under concrete foundation. Sorry.
And you'll be keeping the same level on the land to the rear?
Yes, that's correct. Same level, one level.
Yeah. I don't particularly see any problem with the threat to the wetland. And it seems like this would be a positive determination with a -3.
Commissioner Lovely?
Nothing further. I would just concur with Commissioner Martin that this would be perfect candidate for a -3 determination, which would mean there's no adverse impact with the work. It's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Beardron? All right. Actually, this is a good time to do it. The gentleman sitting to the left of Commissioner Beardron is our soon-to-be newest member, Brian Toner. He's been appointed to the commission, but is just awaiting swearing in. So we welcome him to the commission, and we'll do so more formally at the next hearing. He's just sitting in observation tonight. All right. No other questions from the commission. Is there anyone here who would like to offer any comments or concerns regarding this request for determination of applicability? Okay, hearing none. Do I have I agree with Commissioner Varnum that this would be appropriate for a -3 determination. The only caveat that I would place on it is not to, since you're the builder, the contractor, not to place any equipment, any heavy equipment on the other side of the siltation barrier. That's that's pretty much the note, don't disturb it, and that's what that means. No tools, no men, no nothing. No stockpiles, no building materials, nothing goes over there, okay?
Yes.
Everything stays on the house side?
Yes.
Okay, all right, all right. So do I have a motion for a -3?
I'll make a motion for a -3 that nothing is placed on the opposite side of the erosion control.
Motion by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Varnum. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right,
Thank you. Okay.
good luck. All right, moving on to the third item on tonight's agenda is an enforcement order, is Win Pondview Limited Partnership. The violation location is 109 Wood Street, and it's repaving within the wetland buffer zone without required approval. The violation was observed during a site inspection conducted on April 24th of this year.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Richard Baumer with Nobis Engineering, 585 Middlesex Street here in Lowell. And I'm here this evening to represent the owner, Win Pondview Limited Partnership, in this response to the order. I'm accompanied by Mr. Michael O'Brien from Win Companies this evening as well. We're here tonight to respond to the order and to discuss our proposed approach to the challenges put forth to comply. I'd like to walk through for a moment the plan and make sure everyone's familiar with the site. Here is Wood Street and Westford Street, and then Westford Street continues into the rest of the city up here. Here's the new Lowell 5 Bank. And the apartment complex, with the exception of this out parcel here on Wood Street, essentially wraps around the back. There's an entrance to the road on Carl Street. And the main perimeter road that serves the community comes along the western border. North is pointing to your left, and around to the north and back out to Wood Street, and that's known as Black Brook Drive. The existing wetlands, there's an extensive wetland system here to the west that then continues around further to the north over to the Princeton apartments, and then feeds Black Brook Drive, which flows to the east from that location. The activity that was taking place was the milling of the top 1.5 inch of asphalt on the existing perimeter road, and then replacing that with a new asphalt layer. And the work was taking place in the wetland buffer to this wetland line, and also within land subject to flooding in the floodplain. So this orange line here represents the 100-year floodplain as we saw it in an Alta survey that was prepared a dozen years or so ago. What we discussed with the property manager, as we outlined in our May 5th letter, were a couple of items. As you know, we've ceased and desisted the work. There's only about another 150 feet of actually surface paving left to do here. The property manager last fall had made an attempt to contact appropriate folks in the city, didn't have the right phone number, and wasn't able to reach someone, and kind of gave up. And that's a little unusual, but, you know, wins.
Yeah, considering that we're like in City Hall right now and the office is right down the hallway here. You know, I hate to interrupt you, but this isn't the first dance with this particular property. We've had an enforcement order for almost the exact same thing several years ago here. I'm beside myself. And you know, I keep saying when I see these violations, I don't know how in this day and age someone could look at this property and not think they need a permit to do what they're doing. But apparently, in this day and age, there are still people out there that think they can bring in regraders and fill within feet of land underwater and the Black Brook. I mean, we're not talking buffer zone here. We're talking almost riverfront. Okay, this one transcends reality. I am beside myself with this one. I've been waiting for this one to come here because I just really don't get this. You know, for someone to say, I lost the phone number. This is the city of Lowell, okay? Google exists, phone books exist. I mean, it would take someone 15 minutes to walk from there to here, okay? You know, I mean, I don't get it. I really don't get this.
Certainly understand your frustration, Mr. Chairman, and it's a puzzle in retrospect, and we'll just sort of let that slide. Unless Mr. O'Brien, if you'd like to respond, I'd be happy to.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Michael O'Brien, Executive Vice President with Wind Companies. A couple of unique circumstances here, and I do apologize for the fact that we're before this board again on this particular property. We had appointed a new property manager, and as would happen from time to time, that institutional memory from property manager, knowledge of what's happened in the past, and that transfer to the new property manager would not have been as robust as I would have hoped. And for that, obviously, we are now in this circumstance again. I do apologize to the board. Obviously, no excuse for a professional company to say that we made contact but weren't able to reach the appropriate person for knowledge of whether or not we'd have to file on this particular project for its proximity to the river and the existing wetlands. We obviously are partner with the community. Wind Companies is in the process of, or has invested over $100 million in various projects and have worked very closely with this board and other city boards in order to make sure all the approvals were in place. So I just wanted to make sure I came forward and expressed those words. Thank you.
I believe that our proposed approach here provides an operational response in addition to the technical response of let's prepare the plan that should have been prepared with the perimeter controls. There's also the issue of complying with the engineering driveway permit and doing some stormwater reduction. We've now completed that design, and I'll walk you through that as well. I think important component that we're proposing that we bring to this board with the NOI that we'll file later this week is an operations and maintenance plan to place that on the record to cover this and other types of property maintenance activities that these types of facilities do need to undertake on a periodic basis, and to then provide in that operations and maintenance plan the erosion control protocols, the protection protocols, the notification protocols to the right people to make those notices, and if need be, depending on how we structure the operations maintenance plan, come back in if we're doing specific work in a resource area, that the agent then would determine that, well, that's beyond what the commission has authorized the agent or the staff to work with the property owner on under the guise of this maintenance plan. You've got to come back in for a full RDA or an NOI at that point in time. So we think our response speaks to that specific concern that you raise here in this particular case. So we're not as much relying on institutional knowledge of an individual, but a file that's on record of here's the appropriate operations and maintenance approach on this particular property.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's all well and good, but, you know, I mean, assuming the site manager even bothers to look at the protocols, because clearly someone didn't bother to look up a phone number. And, you know, I don't want to keep going back to that. What I want to do right now is go forward. And the big problem I have here, as you know, is that this is all floodplain. And we have no idea what kind of fill was brought in. And we have no idea what the change in elevations are on that roadway are now. And you know, we don't have any prior elevation shots to be able to determine what the elevation was of that roadway. Now, you know, to me it looked like there was a couple fresh inches of pavement. You know, if that's the case, that's all going to come out. So, you know, unless you can demonstrate what the elevations were pre-milling, to me, that area in the back that's been paved, that's all going to come back out, and you're going to have to start from there. So.
Our understanding is that the scope of work to the contractor included the new pavement was a one-for-one replacement to what was milled. We can confirm that. One other approach that we could take from an investigation standpoint would to do either a side test pit or a pavement core in the new area. So we'd be limiting disturbance and get a sense for, you know, is our total paving section in place here consistent with what the original design was when the facility was built to address that potential fill issue, Mr. Chairman?
Well, you've got two issues there now too. Is you've got the lateral encroachment and you've got the vertical encroachment. You know, as you know, being floodplain, and especially in that particular area, you know, we can go by the inch, and you know, and typically you go foot by foot, but that whole area is flat, and every inch matters. There's been some, you know, fairly high water on a pretty much annual basis in that stretch of the Highlands. So. I'm going to open it up for the rest of the commission. I mean, there's other things I want to cover on this, but for now, I'd like to just at least open a dialogue to see, you know, get a census for what the board wants to do here. I would say at a minimum for me that we're going to need to see a notice of intent filed as to, you know, what we're going to do going forward. But I would like some sense of what the pre-disturbance and elevations are. Now, there's been some, you know, a couple of years ago, and you know, you had indicated, Mr. O'Brien, that you know, there's been a change of property management out there, and the city may also have some of these site plans, so, you know, but I don't know to the extent whether or not there was elevations taken or given. I mean, we may have we may have a situation, you know, where we have plans showing the topography, but again, I don't know if it would in this particular, you know, stretch. This is over on the, you know, the roadway on the, you know, I'm trying, where's north is
North
that
is-
way,
is
yeah,
that
that's
way.
right,
So,
that way.
this is
so-
Westford Street and Carl
Yeah,
Street.
so on the western side, up against the wetland, yeah, I don't know what the, I don't recall. I know that they did quite a bit of paving several years ago on the interior of the project, but I don't know if that encompassed that. They did some on the northern property, and that's what prompted the earlier action of this board. You know, they were, there's a, you know, they were filling in low spots and stuff like that, and that's what prompted earlier action by this board, and I'm trying to think, was that maybe 2008, 9-ish or so?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
my
wasn't too-
understanding is there's a comprehensive sort of a redevelopment of the property that took place in 2001, 2002, and that the most recent activity took place with an RDA in 2013, covered some utility work that was taking place outside of the buffer zones.
Right.
And a negative determination was issued there. I did check with engineering, and they did have record drawings from the original construction, and we've obtained copies of those. We could undertake some survey work to give a comparison, assuming we can identify for work that was that old, a consistent datum point, reference point vertically. We could compare the paving section total and also make some elevation comparisons.
Now, I'm assuming that the paving that's been done was not a mill in place, or Commissioner Beardron, what is that called? That's,
The mill and overlay. Yeah, if you could demonstrate that you milled, let's say, for example, 2 inches, and then you put back 2 inches, then I think we'd be maybe a little bit more, I mean, obviously, we don't want you to rip this all out.
That is my understanding of the scope that was undertaken, but I will double check that, and we'll be happy to
yeah,
confirm that.
and, you know, and along with that, if there was materials removed, obviously, you're gonna have bills of lading or tonnage at the disposal site. You know, if you can match that up, but we're gonna need to see all of that, along with, you know, how many yards of, or I don't know how they measure macadam, but, you know, yards or dump truck fulls, I don't know how they do it.
It's usually in tons, but then we can make a
So
comparison of
you're gonna have
volumes.
to match that up, but it's still, unfortunately for you, you still can't go over the grades. So, you know, just because they match up doesn't necessarily mean that the pre and post grades were the same. It's evidence that it was, but it's not something that the board has to accept. Okay. What your best bet is to find a plan that has pre-existing topographies. Perhaps even, you know, if you're lucky enough to find something with some spot grades along that back stretch, and you know, see if you're at or below those pre-existing topographies.
That would be
or
our intention
elevations.
of comparing, taking get a surveyor out there and take some spot shots along the road, and compare that to those record drawings that we found, and we'll see if there's some potentially other resources between original construction and today's date that could support that.
All right, Commissioner Barnum?
Could I just ask if that paving that was done out there, is that considered the final coat, or were you expecting another coat on top of that?
My understanding is with the exception of the last 150 feet or so, what they were installing was the final top coat.
I was a little concerned because I thought that in some places it was about 3 inches, and I thought that was a little more than they usually put down. But just looking at the edge, you can't always tell because, you know, they just spread it out and they have to stop at that point, so. I don't have a hard copy of the enforcement order, but I was concerned about some of the other activities out there. I don't know if your property manager is in charge of the landscaping maintenance as well.
My understanding is yes, yeah, she would be
Because
responsible for that as well, yes.
there is definite encroachment and violations of dumping of landscaping debris behind the dumpster on the northwest side. And this is not all old. It's been going on for a long, long time. There was a new branch in there today with blossoms still blossoming on it. So I know that it was.
Is this the area you're talking about?
Yes. And that is right on, you know, within several feet of the bank of the Black Brook. There's also evidence along the whole of Black Brook Drive, but here and there where it was convenient that landscaping debris was sort of pushed in over the edge, leaves and things like that. I consider that, you know, maybe more serious than an inch too much of paving, just because it really can do damage to the wetland and the edge of the wetland there. The branches of some of the trees and bushes along there showed quite a bit of damage, and I was wondering where the snow storage area might be, because that's also a concern when you're doing your maintenance plan, that snow with sand and salt in it not be pushed towards the wetland, that there be some area designated for that storage or
We were expecting that
disposal.
would be a component of this O&M plan as well.
There's quite a bit of debris that needs picking up out there in the you know, litter and behind the second dumpster, which is at opposite Tulip Lane. There's a dumpster area there. The pavers dumped a huge couple of big chunks of asphalt behind there, right on the edge of the wetland. That's brand-new asphalt. It's not, it was from this job. I'm concerned about the several areas where there are cuts in the berm and water from the paved areas is allowed to make its way down into the wetland or into the brook. And it appears that there's quite a bit of erosion occurring. There's no sort of riprap or anything to hold that. If that is something that we approve, that those drainage areas can exist, there should be at least some way to stop the erosion that's occurring. It's just running, the water's just running over regular soil.
If I can respond to that particular piece, our proposed plan here on the stormwater side also addresses those particular issues. There are 3 of the ditches that I think you're referring to that I noticed in my site visit on that north perimeter line. And looking at the review of the record drawings, the loop road or the perimeter road has always sheet flowed essentially out to the edges. And so what our stormwater reduction measures are trying to address is we identified those low spots in this very flat profile of the road where the stormwater collects, and then right now runs off directly to either the wetland or out to the floodplain or these ditches that proceed out to Black Brook. So our proposal is we only have 5 feet between the edge of paving and the property line along the west side. We're going to take a couple of those low spots and put an infiltration trench in each one of those cases to capture that first flush of runoff and the pollutants that are contained in that, and try and provide a little bit of filtration of that runoff before it would go to the wetland. Similarly, in order to repair those ditches, at each of those low points on the north side, we're proposing the installation of a stilling basin. So we do a little bit of additional excavation, line that with stone, so that, again, that first flush of runoff can be captured. Any debris that's also coming with the runoff from the road is captured, can be then filtered through the stone and either returned to groundwater to the extent we get any infiltration in those soils, which is unlikely, but then filter out slowly through a stone window out to the rest of the floodplain. So we believe that our proposal on the drainage improvements speaks to those concerns that you raise.
I'd like to see more design work to understand these stilling basins, but just looking at the dimensions, it's going to require quite a bit of cutting of trees and shrubbery, and I'm not sure if the loss of the trees is an equal trade-off for installing the stilling basin.
I'd like to think I anticipated that question with our design. So the dimensions that we have on the stilling basins, when I looked at the vegetation that would be disturbed, it's all very small incidental brush and vegetation that's probably less than 2 inches in terms of diameter that we would be clearing. It's nothing of, and no substantive trees of the shade trees that are in there. There are some very substantial trees along that line. And so we selected dimensions in each one of those locations to limit that work so we would not be disturbing any of those larger trees. So that was part of the trade-off of what we were trying to do with the design.
Is there any particular reason why they're square instead of more lineal to mimic the trench that's already there?
We pushed them out, I was trying to maximize how much volume we could grab, so we could do as much pre-treatment of the volume of runoff as we could. So we just set the dimensions laterally relative to the amount of vegetation, and then similarly, I didn't go too much farther than I felt was appropriate before we'd have to clear some larger trees as well. So the rectilinear or the square shapes was not to make them square, it was because that matched the amount of room that was available in each of the cases.
Because on the other section of the roadway, because of your property line, I understand, you have more long and thin basins there. Are those the same type of basin? Or?
No, ma'am.
No.
If I may, I have a detail of each of those that I could share.
Thank you.
So the first detail is the infiltration trench, and essentially we only really have room to do a 2-foot wide trench that would be 3 feet deep. The whole trench would be filled with stone, so that the sheet flow that would come off of those low points of the perimeter road would fill into that infiltration trench. It would hold that first flush of water. There's filter cloth, filter fabric around it. And then as the larger or additional runoff would come off, it would then sheet flow off into the wetland, but we'd be trying to capture that first flush of runoff in that situation. The second detail is the stilling basin, proposed stilling basin detail. As you can see in the table of dimensions, 2 of the proposed basins are square, and that just happened to coincide with the dimensions that were available in the field. The other one is a little bit more rectilinear.
Thank you. I'll let someone else quiz you.
Commissioner Beardron?
Did you say that there was a permit back in 2013? Was that an
My
RDA?
understanding there was an RDA that was filed in order to do some minor utility work between the buildings.
All right, so it probably wouldn't include a survey of the entire property then?
I don't believe that it did, but
okay.
we'll check.
What happened after the other enforcement order? Did we require a survey?
Yeah, well, a notice of intent was filed. To
With
do,
that, was there a certificate of compliance filed?
say again?
A certificate of compliance filed with that notice of intent?
Oh, it's probably as part of the project, yeah.
And that was how long ago?
Well, and again, I thought it was in late 2000s, but it could have been that earlier, 2001.
I'll check again.
I just didn't think it was that long
I don't
ago.
recall seeing anything else in the file other than the 2013 RDA.
It was definitely before that one, because that was the one for a lot of the interior.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We'll check that.
Yeah,
Joe will
'cause
be in touch.
If you did do a certificate of compliance, you would have had to give us a new spot elevations. And
Right.
that could maybe be your starting spot. So are you guys just milling the road? Are there any paved walkways that are new?
The entire scope is just to replace the road from the winter damage
Just the road,
that we
okay.
had here.
And then, did you just hire someone to put it out to bid, or how did that work?
I believe the work was put out to bid.
All right, so when you put it out to bid, you would have said, mill 2 inches, replace with 2 inches.
That's right.
So
We
that
have
might
that-
be your saving grace if that's the case.
That's exactly right. So we do have a very detailed scope of work that was used for that bid, and to put that under contract, and we'll check that and provide a copy of that to the
Okay.
commission.
And then the rest of that 150 feet, has that already been milled?
I'm sorry?
The 150 feet, that hasn't been touched yet?
That was milled.
Okay.
And
Not overlaid.
and the base course replaced, but not the surface.
Okay. All right, and then, because we do, in this close proximity to the wetlands and the floodplain, we do prefer milling and overlay, which is what you did, as opposed to reclaiming the whole thing. So that is a little bit better. But I do think when you do submit this new notice of intent to mimic Commissioner Varnum, just to add that you would maybe clean along the bank and within the buffer zone, and then also definitely show that snow storage. That'd be huge on the new plan. That's all I got.
I just want to go back, you made a comment earlier on the 3 stilling basins to the north. Yeah. And I know there's discussion to, my term, shoehorn those in to minimize the impacts to the mature trees. But just, something that you said, ticked a memory back from, high school geometry, and to maximize surface area, you go circular, not square. And, I know you're trying to get maximum frontage along the road because you want to cut the berm so you get flow into the area, but would semicircular structures allow you to go with a smaller footprint and maximize the surface area or as you said, volume for treatment. So, I mean, again, that's something you'd have to run the numbers on. I'm not going to sit here and tell you but I'm just saying it's a memory from, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but
We'll be happy to take a look at that.
yeah. So, anything else from the board? And I know Commissioner Lovely has recused himself from this, or is abstaining from this hearing because of a conflict. So,
Do we have to ratify the enforcement order?
yeah, well, we have an enforcement order, so I have a motion to ratify the enforcement order.
I'll make a motion to ratify the enforcement order.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, opposed? The ayes have it. All right, so now, going forward, Joe, and I don't have a copy of the enforcement order in front of me, but my recollection is that they were to appear, but also to, there's verbiage in there to file with us, so.
Yeah, within 21 days.
Right, so, yeah, and, and I know you were using this opportunity tonight to get a sense for how you wanted to go, but going forward now, you need to file.
That's correct.
a notice of
We've
intent.
prepared the draft of the
Right.
NOI, we've prepared the draft of the O&M plan, and the drainage portion of this and the calculations that engineering needs is complete. We wanted to have this discussion with the commission this evening to make sure that we're on the right track. We very much appreciate the additional concerns that have been expressed here so that we can incorporate those into the formal filing. But that shouldn't take us too much longer to do that now. So
All
we
right,
can
now, implicit in your presentation, and believe me, it didn't escape me, was the last 150 feet. And you didn't ask, and I know you want to ask whether you can finish it, right?
Our understanding is until we get an order of conditions in response to the NOI, that we don't do that work.
Yeah. And, this whole, as you know, this whole area is floodplain. I think you got one little corner up by Wood Street that's not. And I'm not even too sure of that, but, the wetland area just wraps right around your whole project, so, yeah, I mean, what is you're gonna be coming back in front of us at the 27th?
That's our desire, if we can get it in time so we can get it here for you for your next meeting. That's our intention. Obviously, we've already got our abutters list, and it's just a matter of can we meet all the regulatory requirements on the notice requirements and the like.
All right.
But that is our intention.
Okay, Joe, do you have a copy of
Of the enforcement order?
of the details
Oh, no.
of the trench? Okay, just make sure that
Yeah, and you might not want to finish that 150 feet, just because if you milled 2 and you ended up putting in 6, because right now we still don't really know what happened, the board's gonna have a problem with that. So you might
Well-
not even wanna put that 150 feet in anyway, so.
yeah, I
That was
just-
the discussion that we had with,
Yeah,
with Wynn, and we were going to wait to resolve this issue.
Yeah, I
and
just wanted
apply
to address
regulatory.
that because it was, hinted at here, and if I caught the hint, I think pretty much everyone caught the hint, so, because I'm usually the last
That
one in
was
the
not my
room.
intention that we wanted to move forward, so I apologize if.
Yeah, no,
for
that's
that, but
okay.
Appreciate
I'm
you
just
bringing it
saying,
up.
I'm usually the last one to catch it, so, yeah, and, for me, no. That has to stay until we see the notice of intent filed, unfortunately, so, okay. So what will happen going forward is the EO will stay open until such time that we either approve a notice of intent in an order of conditions or we close out the project. Typically we close out the EO once we've approved an order of conditions, so, all right. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing else that we need to do at this point in time. We await the filing, so,
Thank you. We appreciate your time, appreciate your comments, so that we can respond to this appropriately.
yeah. And, one last thing you may want to, and I made a note of this, you may want to consider is some signage along the perimeter road, just saying no dumping, any action in this, this area, pursuant to Lowell Conservation Commission. That's yard waste, landscaping
We
waste.
can absolutely do that,
Okay,
so. Great, thank you very much, appreciate your time this evening.
thank you. Well, I'm gonna take these in order. We have under other business notice from Mary Claire Rigby from National Grid dated April 21st of this year regarding vegetation control program. I don't think anyone's here from that, and that's just their annual, semi-annual notice that they're doing cutting and insecticide and whatnot. Is there any comments? Yeah, there was a letter that was sent out. Okay. Next is from Eric Wagner, AI Engineers, Inc., representing Mass Department of Transportation, Mass DOT, dated April 28th of this year regarding installation of fences at 2 railroad bridges, and that's over on the canal, the old Middlesex Canal, I believe, off the Lowell connector, so. Yes, sir, if you could identify yourself for the
Yes.
record.
Hi, for the record, my name's Eric Wagner from AI Engineers. I came out of the Middletown, Connecticut office tonight. The two bridges are part of many in this project. We have probably over 30 bridges that are on inactive rail trails. Mass DOT, we're also a structural firm, and we do bridge structural reports for Mass DOT. We have a contract with them. And these bridges have come up as being either structurally unsafe or they're not tended to be used for future rails for trails. The towns don't have any plans for them. So Mass DOT is concerned about liability, and the project is called for safety improvements. Some of the bridges were going to be totally demolished and removed. Some of them, if there's a planned future use, as these two bridges might be, are just going to be fenced off to prohibit pedestrians from going across. It's still basically trespassing on Mass DOT property, and that's the intent of the project.
All right, so I saw in your letter that you're asking for us to give you like what you have to file an NOI, or would a RDA be sufficient? And can you describe then, get a sense that it was a 6-foot chain link fence that you wanted to do, or an 8-foot chain link fence? And can you describe, I mean, is this just like at the head of the bridge, or is it you're wrapping the bridge? I mean, what do you,
Well, I did send some photos. I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
no,
those.
I saw all the photos and the design, but the scale was kind of hard to see.
Right, we're in preliminary at this point.
Yeah, no, I realize that.
There's a hand pipe railing on top of the parapets along the bridge. And the intent would be to tie in a chain link fence from parapet to cut off so that nobody can get onto these bridges. I'm sure if they want to go through an tremendous amount of effort, there's always a way to go around.
Right.
But that way the liability is covered for Mass DOT.
All right, yeah, I was just trying to get a sense, you're just kind of just putting up a barrier to the casual person saying, hey, don't trespass. It's not, yeah, I mean, obviously, if someone's determined to get around it, they're going to be able to get around it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There will be gates on the center of the tracks for Mass DOT to use if they need to for some reason. The fences will be posted. I understand in the regs of Mass DOT regs for wildlife, there's proposed to have a gap underneath for critters to get through. So we'll be following that as well, make sure the fences are in compliance with that. And that's basically it. The photos, I mainly showed you that we'll obviously need access to get down there with the truck, materials, and men. And some of the other bridges have got thousands of feet we have to clear down the track, so they're in other towns. So that's more of an issue. With these two particular bridges, the access is really close nearby, and it's already cleared. All there is some vegetation along the pipe railings, vines that have grown over, bittersweet probably, and some other things that will need to be cleared in to install the chain link fence. But as far as the access goes, that's already cleared.
And so when are you going to be like boring a sonotube into the ground, or are you just like bolting them to the existing side rails that are already there?
No, they'll be going into the ground, anchored in.
All right.
These two bridges were originally going to be demolished, but in my discussion with town staff, I guess there is an intent that maybe at some point in the future, Lowell may use these for rails for trail. And at that point in time, if that does happen, then the town will have to sign off on the liability of it to incorporate that into their rails for trail projects. But until that point happens, this is what Mass DOT wants to do.
Could the, I guess this is a question for the chairman. Could the fence be considered in the context of what this gentleman was just saying, be considered a temporary structure and therefore no need to have even a RDA filed?
I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at here, I suppose, because in your letter, you had requested what the appropriate level of filing was.
Yeah, I've been going around with the regulations, and I see there is some statements in there that are up to interpretation, whether it's a minor activity, maintenance, or part of a railroad or public works. There's something in there about fencing being exempt. You know, is this in the true scope of fencing, this what we're doing? So I'm just trying to get a feel of.
Yeah, I mean, there's guardrails there already. I mean, this is I'm thinking out loud right now, and I mean, this, to me, I could say, yeah, I mean, you could file an RDA, but I already know that it's most likely a -3, and it would probably take your crews shorter to do it than it would be to prepare the RDA and come back in front of us to get the approval, or the -3, so.
That's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
He's from Connecticut. He came from all the way to
you know,
Connecticut.
To add to that argument,
Yeah.
you're doing this in the spirit of safety.
Right.
And so
Safety
do we want to
improvements.
delay safety
Yeah, I mean,
or a process?
then
And
make
for
it
the city of Lowell, you probably just want to get rid of the bridges and move on. with
Someone
your life.
wants to make them, I mean, there's no real motion here to be made, I suppose, because it's here informally, so. I mean, to me, I'd be satisfied if you just sent a letter, which you've already done, indicating, and for me, I would say we wouldn't request that you take any action, that you wouldn't have to file an RDA for this type of action.
Can we get some kind of formal letter from the commission?
Sure. We could just, send back what your letter saying that the commission will take no action on this, so.
And, maybe just add to that, and what you could do is just follow up, maybe in the letter, Joe, we could just say, following completion of the work, please just send us a letter to confirm that the work's done and with a picture, sort of like what you're proposing to do, and I think that closes it out.
Okay,
Yeah, fence is in. Here's a picture.
Short and sweet.
short and sweet.
Yeah.
For the record, Joe, are you who I've been talking to on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Nice to put a face with the voice.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to the next item under other business is a letter from Andrew Shelby, also National Grid, dated May 1st of this year, regarding replacement of existing underground gas lines along Varnum Ave, and I'm assuming no one came in from National Grid. And that was just a notification. Are they going to be filing, Joe?
No, National Grid's not going to be filing anything. They just.
Yeah, I mean, that's an exempt activity anyway, I think,
Right.
isn't it? Yeah,
I said that.
yeah, so. See, Jerry, I've been dying to make you wait until the bitter end. No, I'm only kidding. And lastly, we have a letter from Mr. Foley from Watermark Engineering, representing National Park Service, dated May 4th of this year, regarding minor modification of the scope of work approved under three orders of conditions, 206-693, 206-694, and 206-706. And that's for the boat docks or something that they were doing over
Yes.
at the blacksmith house, right?
For 3 different locations, yes. For
Yeah.
the swamp blocks, the blacksmith lot, and for the Bellegarde Boathouse.
So you want to do underwater moorings? Is it you want to do moorings now, right?
Well, first, for the record, my name is Jerry Foley from Watermark, 175 Cabot Street. And what happened is the National Park Service has awarded a contract to a company out of Florida, and they've proposed an alternative method for anchoring these docks, which is a lot less intrusive and is also a lot more cost-effective. And we gave you some information with that. Those aren't totally, they're not very descriptive, but basically what it results in is instead of doing what was proposed and approved under the 3 orders of conditions, driving piles down and having these ramps that float up and down. This system is an anchor system using these concrete cables, or cable concrete. I've seen it written both ways. It's basically mass, and it's a flexible mat. I've got some pictures that show it a little bit better if I could. So in essence, it's a 3-piece system. First, we have the anchor piece, which are these mats, and these things are over 10,000 pounds apiece. And they've got a method of laying these out at specific locations away from the dock at an angle, so they secure them in both directions. The next thing is an item called a C-flex connection, which is a design of, it's almost like a tendon where it has pulleys engaged in the middle of it, and it's designed based upon a specific use for changes in elevation. They use these in tidal areas a lot. We impressed upon them the fact that, this river doesn't behave in a natural way, that the proprietors of locks and canals have the right to raise and lower the water at their discretion. They know what those parameters are for the height. They also know what the parameters are for the 100-year floodplain. So they've designed a C-flex system that'll accommodate that shift. So it's a rubber cord in a system of pulleys that'll allow it to go up and go down and still keep tension on it and keep it in place. The third thing is the actual strand that they use to anchor it in place. It's tested for 10,000 pounds before it'll break. So it's a pretty sturdy and flexible system at the same time. And they can do this very cost effectively. It's a lot less intrusive relative to the construction. They'll have a land-mounted crane, small crane, and 2 divers in the water, so they don't even have to have a rig out in the water to do this work, so they can do it off on the land with a couple of divers. And these, you can see the flexibility of these things. They've got a heavy-duty mesh at the bottom. It's actually an erosion control. Its primary use is for erosion control on side slopes and sluiceways where they know they're going to get some water from floods. They anchor it down. It'll conform to the contour of the bottom, so it's not like a rigid block of concrete that just sits there. The other thing is it has a very low profile, so it doesn't catch all that resistance, that lateral resistance from the flow of the river. So it's a pretty interesting way to do it. Lastly, I'll tell you that they have a stainless steel shackle that they will be using for the final anchoring. They'll use the loops that are part of the manufactured delivered cable concrete for putting it in place. And before they put it in, they'll have a stainless steel shackle where they can anchor the C-Flex rope and cord system to the dock and ramp system. The dock and ramp system will be the same configuration as proposed in the original order conditions. So it's just the anchoring system, really.
Okay, so is the picture, Jerry, that you gave us, is that the actual size of one of these things?
Yeah, I believe it is. I think it's 8 by, forget the dimension here.
8 by 16, maybe?
Yeah,
I could count them, but are those 1 foot square? No.
they're a little bigger, actually. They're like
Yeah,
15 inches by,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
16 inches then, yeah.
right.
So 14 inches.
Yeah, they range, I think we gave you a detail here. Let me just check it for you.
So, and, because when I saw your detail that you submitted, it seemed to me, I was kind of, when I saw this, I was like, whoa, those are big. I was thinking of like a boat mooring, like 4 foot by 4 foot,
Right.
something or other. So you're going to use 4 of these for each dock?
Yeah, it changes. We submitted the configurations. They came up with different configurations for each dock, and we submitted that with our package. They're not all the same. If you don't have those, I have additional copies. Let me just double check quickly to answer your question. At the swamp locks, they'll be using 4, correct?
Okay.
You may be correct here. At the Merrimack River, which I believe is that's the blacksmith lot, there's 4 there as well.
Okay.
However, at the Bellegarde Boathouse, 2, 4, 6, 8,
Oh, it's
10,
probably a
12.
lot more than that.
Yeah, 12.
Yeah, because that's a bigger dock.
Mhm.
Okay. There's going to be 12 of those?
Pardon me?
There's going to be 12 of these things?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
at Bellegarde.
Okay, so, and are they, those don't move around once they get placed, or they're pretty permanent?
They call it an anchoring system, and actually, they promote vegetation growth in there as well, because they have that low profile, and like I said before, their main use is for erosion control, where they have steep slopes, and you've got, like engineered swales, and they're afraid that the slope's too steep, that it's gonna cause erosion. I think that's what the application is right there on that picture that they're doing, is they're dropping it in. And above the ground, they can use it, they can loam and seed it. Other places have also used it for putting in boat ramps as opposed to pavement. Just drop it in there, get the grass growing when they can. And so each one's over 5 tons.
How many in the Bellegarde Boathouse, how many piles, those slidable piles were we not using now?
Let me check. Bear with me a second.
No, it's okay.
Actually, the Bellegarde is the one design that we didn't do. That was done by another company. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. And they were pretty substantial. They were like a foot in diameter.
Yeah. Yeah, and they went down quite a ways, too. Yeah, I mean, we can accept this as, you know, as a change to the thing. I just, you know, this'll all backfill, I'm assuming over time, these will silt over and they'll get, you know, it'll just look like the riverbed after a while,
I think you're right.
yeah. So, is there any, you know, any danger of these things dissolving, corroding, breaking
Yeah.
apart, floating, you know, in a catastrophic, you know, velocity flow that we know the Merrimack is capable of, you know, coming loose and getting dragged downriver? If it exceeds 10,000 pounds PSI, yeah, or a tensile strength of 10,000 pounds, I should say not PSI, but on a lateral motion, then it would break. It's designed to break at 10,000. Yeah, the dock would go, but
Right.
what about these things?
I think you'd have to have some serious turbulent flow to pick those things up and move them. I was surprised at the weight myself, you know, really 5 tons, you know, per piece. And the other thing is they've got a pretty, if you look at the dimensions, they've got a pretty low profile. So it's not like they're, you know, a sail catching that lateral load coming down.
All right. Is there any comments from the commission? No. All right, I mean, we can just accept this as a minor change to the filings. Do I have a motion to do so?
I'll offer a motion to accept the proposed change to the existing order of conditions.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? That's a minor change, so, yeah, just to accept them. Okay, all right.
Thank
So-
you.
Okay, thanks for your
Thanks,
time,
Jerry.
appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
No, we have a enforcement order for 58 to 66 Lexington Avenue. That was just issued a couple days ago. It's not on the agenda. It didn't make it in time. It needs to be ratified. Joe, can you fill us in on that?
Sure. So after receiving some word from folks in the neighborhood, our board enforcement agent went out to the property, did witness that some trees have been taken down over at 5866 Townsend Ave, guessing at approximately 10 to 12 trees. We had a meeting with the new property owners this morning, and we're going to have an additional site visit on Friday, as there apparently are some additional trees that may need to come down. One in particular, as the commission received some photos this afternoon, that is approaching, there's a limb that's approaching the house, so they're asking whether or not that can be trimmed or taken down. So staff will be going on Friday to assess some other trees that they're asking to either trim or take down. And we'll have an actual count of the number of trees that were taken down prior to the enforcement order being issued.
What's the jurisdictional area that the trees are in? Is it floodplain?
Yep.
Yeah, it's floodplain, and I'm not they're very close to Clay Pit too, so I don't
Correct.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it's not really possible to tell from the pictures, and there
Right.
was no, there's no, plan
Mhm.
or drawing or anything to indicate, where they were, so, I mean, they could very easily be within the riverfront area too. There's certainly buffer zone, although
Correct.
that's not necessarily an improper activity, but it is under the city ordinance, under the Wetlands Protection Act, it now constitutes fill too, so. But for me, I don't want to see any more trees coming down until they've had the appropriate filing. Now, if there's, a dead branch hanging, they may have to bring in a crew to take the branch out, but not the tree,
Correct.
You know, to the extent that it's threatening personal injury or property, if it's just out in a field somewhere, leave it.
Right.
Okay, no, I mean, they made their own problem. Okay, this isn't a situation where, you know, this just kind of arose on its own. They created the situation, so, you know, they're gonna have to keep everything as is until they make the appropriate filing, and, you know, unfortunately, this isn't the first time with these people, so.
That's correct.
You know, we spent a lot of time over there on this property, and I know this is newly acquired property, but it's still, you know, it's still the same area, so, and it's the same people, so. Yeah, Commissioner Brown.
Joe, are you expecting that when they file, they will send in a plan of where the trees were, how big they were, what kind of trees they were, the ones that were taken down?
That's what we're hoping
And
for
also
as
the
far-
same information for proposed trees that they want to take down?
That's what we're hoping to get for a restoration plan to be filed with this board, is to have an indication of how many trees, approximately how big were the trees that were taken down, and their location on the property. Seems like most of them, if not all of them, were taken down on 58 as opposed to 66. 66 has the structure, the two separate lots, but obviously it'll take a plan to really determine that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice anything that was like threatening, so I'm not, you know, and again, it was just from the street, so.
And it's difficult at this point too, because the claim is that some trees were either dead or dying, but we're unable to determine that, you know, now the trees are taken down, so.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, if you could impress upon the property owners, no further activity in that regard until this commission approves it, or until they filed and come in front of us, you know, so. They are going to be here on the 27th?
Yes.
Okay, are they going to be filing by then?
They should have a restoration plan with this commission. If you would, at that point, have them file an NOI for the next meeting, we could do that.
Yeah, okay, so I'd like, you know, like, in the same vein that Commissioner Varnum mentioned, you know, the species that were removed, you know, cut, the number and a, you know, a top-down plan that shows the locations in reference to the Clay Pit Brook. You know, obviously, we know it's floodplain, so, you know, I mean, they don't, well, I mean, that should be put on the plan, obviously, but it's, we already know that to be a fact, so. All right, do I have a motion to ratify the enforcement order?
I'll move to ratify the enforcement order.
All right, by Commissioner Varnum, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Beardron. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. What are you folks here for?
So this was the letter that went out a few days ago. This is what staff had mentioned, the project going on the Riverwalk. This is to provide an
Oh,
update
yes,
to the
yes,
commission.
yes. Okay, let's do that. As I said, I'm a little slow on the uptake tonight, so.
Laura LaFever and Matt Robbins. We're from TRC Environmental, supporting the city of Lowell in the Phase 2 Riverwalk, which will extend from Boot Mills, roughly 700 feet, down to the corner of Bridge Street in the Merrimack River, where they're proposing a ramp system and then an overlook connecting to the walkway. There is an order of conditions that we have. It's file number 2060641. About a year ago, we submitted a letter to notify you folks of some geotechnical borings that we did. We did that last spring, about a year ago. And then in the next week or so, we will be doing additional soil sampling and test pits as part of the follow-up to the geotech, and Matt's the LSP for the site, so I'll let him explain what we're going to do.
Sure. So Matt Robbins from TRC. I'm a geologist and licensed site professional that handles environmental contamination matters. And as Laura said, we're representing the Planning and Economic Development Department. So on this project, in April 2014, we did a geophysical investigation using an underground radar survey, and we drilled 7 test borings to collect geotechnical soil property data and also soil chemistry data for an environmental analysis. And the results of that investigation showed that the site was had about 15 feet of sandy fill material, and that underneath that there are 2 stone arch raceways under the property, and then there's also the remnants of a former building foundation that's buried there as well. And those were the geotechnical findings. From an environmental standpoint, the soils were found to be mildly contaminated with semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs, and then also with petroleum hydrocarbons. And those 2 things are related to just general urban filling in a city setting, as well as the presence of the former electric substation that was operated there by Mass Electric before the city acquired the property. So we're in the process of designing a remediation to remove the contaminated soils and build the Riverwalk. And we need to do another stage of testing in order to finish that design work. So what we plan to do in the next couple of weeks is go and dig 5 test holes on the parcel in order to take more environmental soil tests, and then also to physically view the raceways so we can evaluate what can be built on top of those. And so our purpose was just to give you an update on the project. And then ultimately, when the design is completed and the construction is ready to proceed, it would be a large soil excavation and removal project that was described in the original submittal in the order of conditions. During these test pits that we're going to do in the next couple of weeks, because of the small size of the site, we intend to remove the contaminated soil and properly dispose or recycle it in accordance with the Massachusetts contingency plan. And my estimate at this point in time is it will probably take off about 200 yards of soil during this test pit process. And when we're done with the test pits, which will be a two-day project, we'll smooth the grades out from the areas that we dug the test pits, and we'll hydroseed it to stabilize that until the actual construction takes place.
It's funny you characterized, because I was going to ask that very question when you started, was how typical were your findings for an urban area like Lowell along a very industrialized stretch, historical stretch of Riverway, and you answered my question in your presentation that it was pretty typical.
Yeah, they are pretty typical, and I would characterize them as mildly contaminated. It's not high concentrations.
So I don't want to be flip about this, but if you, for instance, in your professional opinion, okay, if you were to take a random sampling along various parts of a like kind area along the Merrimack River, you'd expect to make similar findings.
Yeah, I'd say that's true.
What will, I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, so the concentrations of the contaminants that were found there exceeded concentration values that the Mass DEP regulates. So that triggered a requirement for the city as the current owner last July to report the contamination to Mass DEP, and it became a listed contaminated site. So now during the construction process, we have to manage these, what are commonly called urban fill, or maybe more loosely like, downtown brown type soils. You just have to properly and safely manage them, even though, it's a pretty common occurrence, but it's still a regulated material.
Okay, so you're talking the language that these guys get on to my left.
Yeah, well, like,
I'm asking the questions for the people, for myself.
Yeah.
Perhaps even Commissioner Varnum gets this too. I'm the layperson on the board, so.
To get to the root of your question, I think it would be pretty typical of something you'd find almost any place in
All
Lowell,
right.
but it is a regulated material.
So your test pit process, you're expecting to remove 200 yards of soil. Assuming your test pits show you that this is typical urban, semi-VOC, contaminated mildly, how many yards of material are you expecting to remove from this particular site?
So for the final construction,
I mean, and I'm not going to hold you to it, obviously. You don't know.
Right.
I'm just asking your opinion.
yeah, I would say it's probably on the order of 3,000 yards for the final construction. It'll be a very large excavation.
So that's 3,000 yards of now pristine riverbank that we benefit from. Would that be a proper characterization or no?
I think I'll let Laura answer that question, and she can talk about kind of the improvements when the site's built.
But will you be putting like common fill back or something back?
Well, that's part of the design. The soil has to be excavated out anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ramps is gonna go from the street down to the river walk.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a series of ramps, so the soil needs to be excavated.
Could you clarify, you said it's the area between Boot Mills and Bridge Street?
Yeah.
So where exactly along that walkway is it?
'Cause that's not that
Yeah, that might
big,
help.
right?
I think, Laura, that you should...
And is anything like polluted, contaminated, hazardous, or it's just urban fill?
It's contaminated, but it's non-hazardous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big distinction. So it's PAHs.
Yep.
Under what scenario under the 21E program is it contaminated? Is it residential,
Rural,
commercial,
yeah.
recreational? What's the scenario that the DEP is finding that this material is regulated?
Yeah, so we compared it to the residential or unrestricted use standards, which would apply to a park setting.
And it's, my understanding was that Mass DEP, or at least in another world, I've been told by Mass DEP that they don't regulate urban fill.
There are exemptions for that.
Yeah.
And what are those exemptions?
Yeah, sure. So
I'd be curious.
they would apply to they could apply to the pH contaminants, but not to the petroleum that's present.
But now, I think we're talking about two different things though, because contaminated soil is more environmental testing, where when you say urban fill, to me, that means brick, like anything urban in a city is just in the soil. Urban fill doesn't necessarily mean it's contaminated, correct?
Right, so the urban or historic fill, that Mass DEP has some specific exemptions that would, that minimize the regulatory requirements.
Mm-hmm.
They apply to the PAH contaminants and to metals contaminants. This site,
That's wrong. So, I don't mean, for example, if you found lead in soil, DEP doesn't regulate lead if it's in an urban fill environment.
up to certain concentrations, and then when it gets higher, even if it's urban fill, it would still be regulated when you have
Yeah.
high concentrations. Yeah,
Yeah, you can, yeah, as long as you're hitting those contaminated hazardous levels, you gotta get it out of there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, at this site, none of the metals exceeded the regulated standards. It was just the PAHs and the petroleum. but there's not a historic fill or urban fill exemption for the petroleum.
Thank you.
But regardless, you want to get contaminated soil out of there.
Correct,
Correct.
and it needs to be removed for the construction to happen. If,
Any-
I
yeah.
can bring forward a cross-section,
And
and
the-
I think it might help
The
explain.
bottom
how the-
line is, that once it's excavated, it's not clean fill, so it needs to be properly
Yeah,
managed. It's not hazardous. I'm assuming you're probably going to look to put it, in an asphalt batch plant or something like that.
Right, it'd be a combination of recycling at an asphalt batch plant and use at approved Massachusetts landfills.
Now, are you the LSP on site?
Yes, I am for the
Okay.
city, yeah.
Wait, so can we go back to the chair's question when he said, if you were to go on anywhere in the river, would that soil be there? Is it the urban fill that you think would be there, or contaminated soil that you think would be there, or both?
On the, not in the river, but on the land side,
Yeah.
the urban fill would be ubiquitous or almost everywhere
Is
in
everywhere.
a city like Lowell,
Yeah.
And the reason that so much soil needs to be removed is not because it's contaminated, but because of the grading changes for the ramp construction to allow the park users or the river walk users to actually walk their way down to the river. And I'll bring up this cross-section, and I think that'll show that.
So then the amount of fill removal was part of the design plan anyway. It just happens to be that you ran into this roadblock. Okay, all right. So I'm just trying to put it in language that I understand. You guys can talk your VOCs and PhDs and all of that other fancy stuff. I'm just trying to understand it for me.
Yeah, so it's going to be, from the existing grade, it's going to be like a winding ramp down to the river. So that's
Right.
going to, all that soil needs to be
All right.
taken out to get down to,
20 feet
yeah.
from the street down to the river walk.
And from the boot mills to Bridge Street, where along that linear footage are you looking to put that bridge? I'm having a tough time understanding where.
Oh, it's a nice little area.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little area.
This is the boot mills right here, right?
Yeah.
This is the existing walkway.
Right.
It ends right there. So then the new, we're not doing this yet, but this is part of the project. They'll extend it.
Oh, that's right, because it ends right there right now with
Yeah,
the,
ends
with the
right there.
gate, because,
Yep,
all right.
yep. We'll go across, and then the parcel here that we're talking about. So then there'll be ramps. This is like an overlook, cantilevered ramps going up to the street level, and it's like 25 feet.
Some other, I think it's a separate project, some other developer is doing, I remember a hearing we had like last year for some of these other
Right,
buildings.
right. It's, this
This is
could,
great.
yeah, I mean, this, I think, will be popular with wedding photographers, so.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, the city worked very hard to acquire the property from Mass Electric, and they've had this, under planning for a long time.
Pictures too, if you want to see.
All right. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, we,
Yeah, so we weren't, requesting any particular approval or anything. We just
Right.
wanted to let you know,
Yeah.
we will be out there in a week to 10 days doing these test pits, and we're going to be hauling some of this regulated contaminated soil off the property while we're doing that.
Yeah, it's not the full construction yet, because
Or it's like, get it out of here.
it's site characterization and
Yep.
remediation, and then we're going to continue, Carol R. Johnson's doing the design, continue the design, and then it will go out to bid, and then,
All that.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn, and we have some things to sign?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
By Commissioner Bearden, seconded by
I'll second.
Commissioner Lovely. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the ayes have it, and good night.